Coming to you from the big island of Hawaii, it's the Songs and Stories Podcast. And now, here's your host, Steve Roby.
Aloha! Welcome to another episode of the Songs and Stories Podcast. It's a weekly show where we talk with Big Island musicians and discuss their music. On today's episode, my guest is Dagan Bernstein. Welcome, Dagan.
Aloha, Steve. Thank you for having me.
All right. Good to hear your voice. It's been a while.
It has. Nice to be heard.
Tell our listeners when you first became interested in music and then wanted to make it a career.
Well, my interest in music did start at a very young age. I grew up in a coffee shack, kind of way in the boonies in South Kona, and we didn't have television, so both my parents, who love music, and my dad, who's a hobbyist musician, was always playing records around the home. We always had random instruments lying around the house. And it kind of started with ukulele when I was, third, fourth grade at school, and soon graduated to guitar when I was about 10 or 11, and kind of just always had an instrument in my hands, was always expressing myself musically. So that's how it started. I would say is music being a creative, artistic endeavor, and professionally, was when I moved back to Hawai'i Island after college in my mid-20s and started kind of gigging around and getting in on jam sessions and kind of playing around at restaurants and parties and whatnot, and kind of just jumping into the music arena that way.
Were there any local musicians that inspired you to continue on with music that kept you going?
Yeah, definitely. A pivotal moment really in my kind of moving from just kind of jamming with friends and doing it for fun into something more serious was when I first met the late Braddah Smitty. Like I said, I was just kind of doing it just kind of on the side and for fun. And I was always very, very inspired by the musicians in my area. I'm very lucky to grow up around, I think there's just an endless supply, it seems sometimes, of just fabulous musicians here in Hawaii. But yeah, Braddah Smitty used to host this kind of open kanikapila jam session at some restaurants around Waimea. And I used to just kind of go and at first listen and just kind of take in the music, maybe bring my ukulele and kind of jam kind of way on the side, like it was just an open jam session.
How fun.
He'd kind of take over the whole restaurant. Yeah, it was super fun. It was like a Sunday afternoon. He'd take over the whole restaurant, and there'd be, anywhere from 10 to 15 people jamming along. And over time, over months and months of doing that, I slowly kind of got closer and closer to the middle of the jam session where kind of the core musicians were playing. And I kind of one day just walked in and Smitty said, in his kind of Hawaiian way, like, "Hey boy, I like you come sit right here today." And he pulled up a chair right next to him. His instructions were pretty simple. What I play, you play. That was pretty much my instructions. And he kind of, took me under his wing in some way. And I think he maybe saw, my love for kind of the older style of Hawaiian music, kind of that kanikapila tradition from Gabi Pahinui and the Sons of Hawaii and the Makaha Sons of Ni'ihau, just that old style of playing. And I spent about 5 or 6 years playing alongside him, really up until he sadly passed away, kind of getting introduced to what I really consider a next level of not only musicianry, but also just the world of being a professional musician, because that was his living, and playing at festivals, the festival circuit here on Hawai'i Island, and just really that kind of next tier of stage and music venue and whatnot. So that was a real significant kind of transition in my music career.
All right. I wish we still had that going on there. That'd be a lot of fun to see musicians all together. I'm so starved for entertainment these days.
Yeah, I think it was kind of a moment in time. It really, I don't know if we'll ever recreate that. It really was a true moment in time.
Wow. So you define your music style as paniolo folk music. For our listeners not from Hawaii, can you describe this genre of music and the inspiration for it?
As I kind of started expressing myself more creatively as a musician after being really immersed with this traditional style of Hawaiian acoustic music. I had some deep influences of traditional country music that really was just the music around me growing up here in Waimea, in, paniolo country, Hawaiian cowboy country, where you do hear Hank Williams, Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash, and so on, just kind of around you. I think that music really fits in with our environment around here, upcountry in Waimea. And I just kind of, there is a subgenre in some ways of Hawaiian music that is paniolo, based on like the paniolo lifestyle. Definitely Ernie Cruz Sr. And Liebert Lindsay would be some of and even Sonny Chillingsworth would be some of the musicians who embody that. People who were true paniolo in the sense of they were working cowboy. And this is the music they played. Where for me, that's just where I felt most comfortable creatively expressing myself musically, is just this space in which Hawaiian and traditional country music, or country western, or whatever you want to call it, roots Americana music kind of overlap. I just saw myself living in that space, not only in the musicality of it, the instruments, the chord structures, of course, the steel guitar, which to me embodies that conversation between Hawaiian music and country western music. That's a whole other discussion we could have.
Right.
But so yeah, paniolo music to me is just music of and about the people, places, and things that are found in kind of cowboy country all throughout Hawaii, because they're paniolo not only in Waimea but across all the islands, or even different places on Hawaii Island. And there is a unique cultural thread, I think, that connects them, that I personally just identify, not by being a paniolo. Like, I'm not a cowboy, and I'm very upfront about that. I that's not who I am, but I grew up around that. I have friends who live that life. It's what's around me, and I think, artists are a reflection of their place that they grew up in. Yeah, so for me, it just kind of all comes together. So, for me, paniolo folk music just describes what I do. I'm not a pure country artist per se. I'm not a pure Hawaiian artist per se, but I feel really comfortable in this space that kind of overlaps those two worlds.
All right. Well, I guess that leads me to my next question is, how would you describe your songwriting process?
It can happen in different ways. First and foremost, I think I really come from a storytelling kind of mentality. I have a passion for this place that I grew up in and this place that I call home. I want to tell the stories of the people, places, and things around me. So I'm always looking, or also not looking, I need that inspiration. And so I could find stories anywhere. It could be in just seeing someone or something happen, or reading about something. I am kind of an avid reader and historian of things in Hawaii, and I'll just scribble something down. It could be an idea, a song about this, or this. It could be a phrase. It could be a lyric. I'm really just trying to find some kind of entry into the song, something to just open the door into this world, because I look at each song as being kind of its own story, its own kind of structure, if you will. It's kind of, once I get in there, it's just putting all those pieces together. So, sometimes it could just be a chord progression, could be kind of that piece, that crack in the door. It could just be a couple chords that I put together that have a cool feel to them. So it just starts with something little, and then just over time, which could be, that's always the interesting part. It could be 30 minutes. If something's really, sometimes oddly just comes out, it can come out really that fast. I've had that happen. And sometimes it could be months, if not years, where you go back and revisit a piece, a lyric you wrote down in a notebook, and you kind of look at it anew and want to build something around that. So Yeah, that's kind of in general how the process goes.
Let's listen to some of your music now. What's the first song we're going to hear today? And can you tell us the story behind that?
Yeah, so the name of the song is Ha'aheo Nakanaka Paniolo, which roughly translates to, glory be to the paniolo. Do you want me to give the whole story right now before we play it, or should I just kind of tease it a little bit? Because
okay. Let's do that. Let's be loose and free and tease it a little bit, and then on the back side of that, we'll come out when we come out of it.
Okay.
You can finish it. Okay.
Right. It's really just kind of a day in the life of a paniolo, just kind of from sunup to sundown. There's some imagery that I can talk a little bit more about later, about the paniolo gliding across the plains of Waimea on their horse, much like the canoe riders of old glided across the oceans between the islands. So there's some imagery there between the paniolo and the navigator, as well as some kind of geographical things that the paniolo uses to navigate through the riding along the earth. So that's kind of the general story behind the song. It's just kind of trying to really capture that experience of the Waimea cowboy and what's it like to live a day in the life.
All right.
Of the paniolo.
Here's Dagan Bernstein on Songs and Stories.
Riding along the ancient pathways, he makes his way to wherever he needs. The horse is the paniolo va'a, the ground is the paniolo sea. He climbs through the forests of Mana, guided by the hills and the wind, like navigators that came before him, going places they have never been. Ha'aheo nakanaka paniolo, ina va'a holo honua. Ha'aheo nakanaka paniolo, ina va'a holo honua. Sailing on the pastures as an ocean, the moon lights his way so he can see. Travels from the mountain to the shoreline, living life so open and free. At the beach, he rests for the evening, catches fish and sleeps under the stars, with drink and plenty of eating, and the strumming of slacky guitar. Ha'aheo nakanaka paniolo, ina va'a holo honua. Ha'aheo nakanaka paniolo, ina va'a holo honua. With the sunrise, he must be leaving. Grabs his kaula'ili and his rein, lifts his paddle one at a time, and rides his vessel home so carefully. The paniolo lives in a balance with what the kai and the aina will provide. Contained within the ahupua'a is everything needed to survive. Ha'ina mai kapuana, ha'aheo nakanaka paniolo. Ha'ina mai kapuana, ina va'a holo honua. Ha'ina mai kapuana, ha'aheo nakanaka paniolo. Ha'ina mai ka puana ina wa'a holo honua ina wa'a holo honua ina wa'a holo honua.
Did you know that you can also find Songs and Stories episodes on our website, bigislandmusic.net? The online magazine has been covering the music scene since 2017, and there's lots of great content, including interviews, reviews, and video performances too. Head over to bigislandmusic.net to find out more.
Dagan Bernstein is our guest, and you promised my listening audience you were going to tell us the rest of the story of that song we just heard.
Yeah. Sorry, I had to, for me, there's so many layers when I write. So I was like, how deep should I go? The origin of the song really was that metaphor and that imagery I was talking about, the Va'a Holo Honua, which you heard in the song, in the chorus. And that translates, the Va'a is the canoe, and Holo Honua means to ride across the Honua, the earth. And I first came across that from Danny Akaka Jr., who's a cultural practitioner here on Hawaii Island. And I was at a music and cultural festival in Laupoihoi, and it was the theme of one of their festivals from years ago. And I just was fascinated with this imagery of the cowboy on their horse and the Hawaiian of old navigating across the ocean. Because, obviously horses are not native to Hawaii, and native Hawaiians didn't ride horses pre-contact. They were an ocean people. They were very comfortable on the ocean and navigating by a canoe, and they really transitioned to the horseman and horsemanship lifestyle. So that I sat and talked story with Kaniala, Danny, and he kind of took me through, and he really broke down some of that imagery in more detail. And I left that conversation. I was like, I have to write a song about this. This is just such an amazing imagery. So first off, I have to, give respect to that I didn't come up with that imagery. That came from someone else and from someone else's mana'o. But like I said, I just kind of am always looking for things to take in. And as I started kind of messing around with the song, I really honed in on the chord progression. As you heard in the song, it's in a minor key, and it's kind of a subtle homage to the song Ghost Riders in the Sky, kind of a classic cowboy song, and that kind of galloping minor rhythm. So I kind of built it around that minor key rhythm. And then I was having trouble, and I started getting the lyrics, riding across the ancient pathways. And I had that kind of going like, okay, this is going to be the story of a cowboy, and the kind of going down to the ocean, and that aspect of the paniolo where they also are still comfortable in the water. They can still go fish and cook fish and then, ride back up Mauka, that kind of Mauka to Makai life of the paniolo. And when I was trying to put together the hook, I actually got this musical idea from a song called Moku Kiakahi, which the Sons of Hawaii have a pretty well-known recording of it. And they actually modulate to a major key in the middle of the song. And I was like, oh, and I tried it, and it worked so perfectly. I was like, that's it. And then it hit me that Moku Kiakahi is a song about a ship. It's about a sailing ship. And it all the pieces kind of came together. So there's, like I said, there's kind of these layers. There's an homage to Ghost Riders in the Sky. There's this sailing song from traditional Hawaiian music, and the modulation of the key. And the song really came together beautifully in a way that reminds me how, as a creative, my job is to just really channel these things that are out there, kind of waiting to be put together. I don't feel like I really created the song in that sense. Like, the elements were there. I just wanted to put them together. And I really love this kind of song that tells the story of the Hawaiian cowboy, and I think a beautiful way. And the steel guitar, I have to shout out the steel guitar. Christian Wallington from Hilo side just laid down this awesome steel guitar riff, and it really just fits in perfectly.
Dagan, I always learn so much when I ask you to kind of explain your music and the songs behind it. And I just want to say thank you for keeping the tradition of these stories alive here that happened years and years ago on the island there. It's always a treat and a treasure to hear you explain your music.
Oh, well, mahalo. I mean, and that's something I learned from the people who came before me. I mean, like I said, playing with Braddah Smitty, it's something he always really told me. He's like, you got to tell your story. Tell the stories of Hawaii. I remember him saying, I know you love Johnny Cash music, but, Johnny Cash ain't Hawaiian. Like, it was really like, there is a kuleana, there is a responsibility. If you're going to play these songs from Hawaii, from the Hawaiian music canon, you have to give back. You have to, there's a point where you have to create and tell your own stories and create your own narrative and share the things happening today with still that foot in the past. And that's really the beautiful thing about the Hawaiian approach to music composition. So it's really just my honor to kind of do what I can to continue that tradition of all the songwriters before me.
Very important. Let me switch gears here. How did the pandemic affect your music plans in 2020? I know you used to play a lot of the local coffee shops and around the island and everything like that. What's it been like for you, the change?
Yeah, I mean, the change has been, very significant. I pretty much went from 2 gigs, sometimes 3 a week, to actually right now I only play once a month at a local farmer's market. Over the summer, I did do a pretty heavy streaming rotation on Facebook and Instagram to kind of explore that space. So I was doing weekly, sometimes 2-3 a week live streams. And I was doing kind of Venmo, PayPal donation based, and, was able to generate some revenue to supplement the lost revenue from not having gigs. So it, in that way, it did affect me pretty heavily. I am not a full-time musician. I do operate as a full-time educational professional, as well as, as a musical creative and as a musician. I'm sure the people who do rely full-time on revenue from music have a different story to tell. But for me, it is an important part of my life. And, unfortunately, I'm not interested right now in kind of jumping back into, I don't know, different restaurants are starting music back up again. I personally just am fine just kind of waiting to see where things go with that, and just doing my outdoor farmers market gig once a month is keeping me happy for now. So
yeah. Do you have any studio solo projects that you're working on? Plans for next year of doing something musically, maybe not in the clubs, but as putting out new material?
Yeah, I do have some songs in the works. Right now, I haven't stepped in the studio with them yet. Over the summer, I had kind of, refocused my attention to some song composition that had been on the back burner. Because honestly, this Song for Waimea project was it was the biggest project I've put together in terms of a album and all the associated things. And I actually was pretty creatively drained at the end of it. I remember in January, looking at the new year, I was really like, wow, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what happens next. Like, I had put so much into getting this music out that I wasn't sure where I was going to go next. But I started to feel kind of March, April, maybe it was just spending more time at home and more time picking up the guitar. I started writing again and reworking some songs. So I have a handful right now. I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but there's some stuff coming up when the time's right.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the second song you sent over. I love the title, Aloha, Freely Given and Returned.
That song really started on a conceptual level. As someone who, I grew up when I was really a kid was kind of the early 80s, mid 80s time in South Kona. And I feel like I caught kind of the end of this time in Hawaii that was really kind of tied to that old school way that you kind of 50s and 60s, that real, agricultural based communities, really small communities, not what we've seen happen over the last 30 years with the introduction of big box stores and heavy tourist commodification and all that. It was kind of this little pocket of the end of that era. And I've always really wanted to write a song to kind of capture that just vibe. I don't know, like a real analog kind of just old school nostalgic Hawaiian feeling in a song. I've just always artistically wanted to do that. So I kind of always had that idea. And that one really did start with that chord progression. I was listening to a lot of Kalapana, a lot of Country Comfort, and I just kind of got this little groove going that's kind of a like acoustic, a 70s folky acoustic kind of thing, with a little swing to it, a la Kalapana. And I had that chord progression, and I would just play it for just over and over. And I didn't know what to do with it, but I knew it was the feeling was there. I knew I had the right, like, kind of canvas to put some lyrics to. And, one thing I do that I learned from Linda Perry, a song, not personally, but listening to YouTubes of her interviews with her, Linda Perry, who from Four Non Blondes, who's an amazing songwriter. She talks about just actually completely emptying your mind and just kind of going in and just start singing a song over a chord progression. And she's actually done this with some artists she's worked with, where she just has them, she hits record and just says, start singing. And I tried that approach to this song. I just played the chords, I emptied my mind, and I just started with, do you ever wish for the times you used to hear about in songs? And I kind of just, when life was slow and easy, we talked story all day long. And it like came this, it was like, that was it. Like, do you ever yearn for that time ago when things were so easy and mellow? And that's kind of how the song started. And then from there, it kind of just, it did start to happen pretty fast. It was one of those songs that the words just kind of came out. The different imagery from the different islands, the waterfalls of Molokai, the sugarcane on Lahaina, the birds in Kauai. I feel like I just had tapped into this imagery that was just in my mind from just observing places that I've traveled around Hawaii, the different islands in Hawaii. And then when the chorus section came, that line, aloha freely given and returned, I didn't necessarily know it was going to be the concept of aloha was going to come into the song. But to me, it was really it's like the glue that brings the song together. Because it's like, well, what are you talking about? Like, great, you can be nostalgic for old Hawaii. Great, time was so easy. And it was like the aloha is what is really, no matter how things change, that is the essence of Hawaii. And that's where that line came from Haunani Trask, a Hawaiian intellectual essayist, lecturer, activist. And she wrote a very well-known essay where she talks about the cultural concept of aloha in Hawaii and to Hawaiians, and how it is something that cannot be commodified. It's something that exists authentically by the Hawaiian people and is freely given to those who embody the kind of in their na'au, in their gut, they embody that true essence of what it means to be culturally Hawaiian, and that this spirit of aloha is freely given to you with the one expectation that you will freely return it, not only to the one giving it to you, but to others that you come across. And that was kind of what, like I said, it was kind of the glue it gave the song direction. I think it gave the song a statement, or for lack of a better word. It gave it kind of something to say, which I think is important. Your song has to have a reason for existing. And that's what that song needed at the time, for it to really feel complete.
ever wish for the time you used to hear about in songs? When life was slow and easy and we talked story all day long. You go down to the general store and you'd know everyone you see. All the people passing by would be friends and family. I find myself thinking back to these days as time goes by. I wonder if it will all be gone in the sweet by and by. But this way of life is much too strong. It's in everything we do. From the windward to the leeward side, up the Malka side too. And it might seem like things ain't never gonna be the same. There's condos on the beaches and the mountain trails have all been claimed. There's just one thing that they can't take, no matter how hard they try. It's the aloha freely given and return to you and I. From the snows up on Mauna Kea after a chilly evening rain, to the Lahaina winds blowing through the native sugar cane, to the Iva on Kilauea Point soaring above the sea cliff walls, to the lands of Molokai, home of the Kamalo Falls, to the Braddahs out on Makaha Beach, where the living's nice and free. I hear the painful cries of Kaho'olawe traveling across the sea. And to everyone that feels Hawaii deep within their soul, lift up your voice, sing your song, share the stories you were told. 'Cause our way of life is special, we can't let it go away. It's our kuleana to teach the keiki the old Hawaiian ways. And remember one thing they just can't take, no matter how hard they try. It's the aloha freely given and return to you and I. Our way of life is special, we can't let it go away. It's a kuleana to teach the keiki the old Hawaiian way. Remember one thing no one can take, no matter how hard they try. It's the aloha freely given and returned to you and I. Aloha freely given and returned to you and I, to you and I, to you and I. The aloha freely given and returned to you and I.
And we're talking story with our guest today, Dagan Bernstein. I noticed on your website, Dagan, you explore the history of Waimea on the Big Island. What was the inspiration for this detailed short history lesson, if you will?
I think this album project just kind of took on a life of its own. You know, I was recording the songs and putting the album together. I had some different ideas about what the album title would be. There just seemed to be this thread. Well, one of the songs is called Song for Waimea on the album. And I just kind of had this moment where I knew that was really what the spirit of the album would be. It was really a culmination of a lifetime of experiences growing up in Waimea, visiting places in Waimea. I mean, there's songs about Wailea Bay along the coast, about Ohai'ula Beach, the paniolo songs. And so as I put together the album, I mean, I think as a creative, I just really wanted to creatively explore what you could do now with an album digitally, because you don't really purchase a physical album as much anymore. So I had this idea about, I wrote an essay on my website as well, in which I use all the song titles to kind of tell my story. And I also built this page out in which I have a bunch of resources about Hawaii, or about Waimea, from video, from YouTubes about paniolo, to books about paniolo, to different articles I sourced online about different elements of, Waimea and the Kohala area, as well as I made a Spotify playlist that's just all songs of Waimea that people can check out. So I don't know, I kind of had fun with it. Again, I try and think of myself as an artist in the truest sense of the word. I mean, that is why I do this. I have a creative desire to express myself through music, and it was just really exciting to put it together. And I just saw these different layers of what you could do. And I've seen other musicians do this. I mean, none are coming off the top of my head, but I think from seeing how different musicians have explored the digital space, there's so much you can do now. And I kind of just ran with it and, learned a lot about how to format a website, because I did it all my own, did it all by myself. And it just really, I was up till 2 a.m. some nights. I was totally all in on just I had this vision in my head of what I wanted it to look like. And I just wanted to put it up there to just really, like I said, to me, it was hands down the biggest creative project I've ever done as a musician, in terms of the recording, the musicians I brought in, the photography, the packaging, and the website and everything. So I just really wanted to go all in with it if I was going to do it. And so, you'll see on the website, there's a Song for Waimea page that has just all kinds of different cool stuff you can interact with.
Right. I feel your pain with website design too. It can be frustrating.
It can. The boxes just won't go where you want them to go.
Exactly. But it's come a long way since trying to design a website. I remember back in the 90s, it was like, I got to learn code and all this stuff. And it's gotten a little bit easier.
Right. Oh, yeah. Squarespace is makes you seem like a design genius.
Yeah. It's cool. Well, let's give out the address for your website. And is that the best place for folks to find your music?
Yeah, it's daganmusic.com, DAGAN music, one word.com. That's definitely a great place to kind of see a bunch of these resources I was talking about. Mm-hmm. I do have Facebook and Instagram pages at Dagan Music as well. I would say you're not going to see a lot of content since the summertime. Like I said, I've been taking kind of a break from performing and promoting myself. I would say on my Facebook page at Dagan Music, I do have an archive of all those live recordings I did over the summer. So you'll see, if you kind of mess around with the page, I think there's a live page or a video page. So there's all those videos. It's just me in my room playing, but the audio quality is pretty good. I tried to capture it using a professional mic setup. Mm-hmm. So they're hour-long streams. So if you're looking for some musical content to consume, you can just hit play on one of those hour-long videos. But yeah, in terms of my socials, those are at Dagan Music. But yeah, my website is where I have, if you want to check out some of those things I was talking about, you'll see all the Song for Waimea resources there.
Great. And I'll put a link to your site in the show notes below this podcast. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we go? Is there something we haven't covered that we should have?
No, just mahalo to you, Steve, for all you do to support musicians here on Hawaii Island. And I feel blessed to make and share music here in this community. And shout out to all the Hawaii Island musicians. I think we have some great, great talent hiding on this island, and platforms like this are going to help us kind of maybe get out there through the interwebs and, maybe put a spotlight on some of the great talent here on Moku o Keawe. So mahalo.
I sure hope so. Mahalo, Dagan, and thanks for being a guest on today's show.
Of course, my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Songs and Stories podcast. Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. We'll see you next week on Songs and Stories. Aloha.